Hi, my name is John Light, and I've spent over 20 years working throughout all corners of the recruiting world. Our podcast, Drowning in the Tech Talent Pool, is a resource to help you stay afloat and get ahead of your competition. Hi, and welcome to Drowning in the Tech Talent Pool. I'm your host, John Light, President and CEO of Sabretooth Recruiting, and today we're having a conversation with Alec, make sure I say it right, Lazarescu. Alec is a VP of engineering with a deep focus on conversational AI and NLP. And I was just excited to have you on here, Alec, because I think you're on the cutting edge, the bleeding edge of everything that's going on. And I'd really like to learn more about how you got where you're at and dive in a little bit about your take on how AI is affecting current state and future state of work.
I've been in education as far as like the digital side of education almost my entire career, 20 plus years. And the conversational AI has been kind of on the fringes of it for most of it until kind of my paths intertwined in that respect. So in 2016, I attended an event in Austin called Talkabout that was about different conversational AI advances. Really eclectic, interesting group of people there. And it got me really excited about the topic to the point where before I left the event, I actually went on meetup.com and created a meetup group in New York where I was working at the time. And I didn't know who was going to speak or what I was going to do, but I really wanted to kind of keep learning about the space. And I thought creating this group would be a great way for me to learn alongside the speakers that I'd be inviting. And it just steamrolled from there. It was kind of the right place at the right time too, I think. I was able to get in contact with someone at Samsung Ventures who offered me a space and pizza. And I was rolling. I had my first topic was me talking about what I learned at this event. And we had people amazingly show up to listen and had almost 60 events since then. And eventually it ended up being something that merged into kind of my main career, where I was working on AI-based messaging at a previous company to Savvis. And then at Savvis, now we're also doing some exciting and interesting work with AI as well. So kind of my passions of education and kind of working with different chatbots and learning about AI have come together nicely.
Man, yeah. I mean, and starting up the meetup group, I think it's brilliant. And getting someone like Samsung to sponsor, it's brilliant too, especially space and pizza. I mean, come on.
Yeah. And beverages.
Trifecta, as far as I'm concerned. So tell me this, when you look at the state of AI and AI tech as it exists today, here in 2024, there's a lot of upside that everybody's chasing right now, but I'm interested in, we look at it today, what can it not do? And in conjunction with that, what are the limits that we as people who are starting to engage with it and use it and apply it, and let's say apply it from a process perspective or a decision making or analytical perspectives, what should people be aware of?
That's really a really good thing to start thinking about. And people have started hearing about kind of words like hallucinations and kind of getting answers that aren't quite correct. And I really feel like the thing that's distinct about AI compared to like a person is that the AI is very good at the trappings of appearing knowledgeable. Like if you're talking to someone, there's often tells that maybe they don't quite know what they're talking about, or they can't even string a coherent thought together. But the AI will speak so eloquently and sometimes be completely wrong, and that can catch you off guard if you're not used to thinking about that and really separating how is it explaining things versus like what is it actually telling you. So that's really, I think, why this really gets people in trouble sometimes, because it's really a different experience than talking with a person.
To that end, and I can't recall, maybe you and I touched on this, but let's use pizza as an example since we're kind of on the topic. AI then would be able to tell you, hey, if I want to try a new pizza recipe or a new whatever it might be. It could give you advice, it could give you information, I suppose. But would you necessarily want the AI to pull the trigger on what you're going to have delivered at your house for the big game?
I really like AI as something that can kind of inspire you, give you things to think about, almost be like a one-to-one uh, debate partner or someone to help you structure your ideas. Depending on how mission critical what you're asking it to do, I wouldn't at this stage say go ahead, like give it access to push that last button, like push the order button, or spend money or make certain key decisions on its own. Even something like ordering a pizza. How do you know that AI system doesn't have guardrails in place to not order 300 pizzas? Maybe it thought you really liked pizza and it just decided to order 300 of them. So I like having the final say with things going on with AI systems. So extremely helpful for many things and for kind of self learning, but not really at the stage where you let it just run completely autonomously for everything.
Yeah, because there's a lot out in the candidate market right now about using AI to tailor resumes, develop cover letters specific to jobs people are applying to. And I think there's a definite need to still be the human in the loop and maybe trust AI to get you 80% there, maybe a little more, a little less, but you got to be responsible for the final product.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I see a lot of companies taking AI and kind of wrapping it around existing processes and then claiming it's AI powered, but they're not really changing the process. It seems like they're just accelerating it. And case in point, I saw an advertisement earlier this week actually for an AI chatbot used for interviews. So a person gets online in a video scenario and interviews with an AI chatbot, which maybe they have a preset battery of questions, maybe it comes up with its own questions. Um, but the use case is to, okay, you could interview 5 times as many people now using this technology versus having a person interview it. And in terms of screening and maybe vetting certain qualities, characteristics, requirements, that sort of thing. But it hasn't really changed the process. It's just sped it up. Now you can do 5 times the volume at a point in the process that's already existing. And I wonder how much people understand that AI hasn't evolved in the Skynet just yet, so to speak, but the critical component that at this stage in its development and probably into the near future, it's a tool like any other tool would use. It gives you can give you the potential for a lot of efficiency, but the potential for a lot of just regurgitation that may or may not make sense. And we still have to be there to help it make sense.
I really think at this stage, it's really a good tool to augment someone. And you need to consider how you engage with it and what you ask it to do. Um, Given the nuance of actually talking to a person that is interested in your company, I'd be a little concerned about outsourcing that to a complete screening system. There's probably a lot you can miss, and even just a comfort factor, I think, of having someone their first view of your company be not a person but some automated system. um, yeah, I think people try different things and try to scale processes, but I don't personally feel that's something that's really ready or appropriate right now.
Let me ask you this: Is there, and I'm putting you on the spot, I know, but is there a use case for candidates to apply AI to their job search that would maybe not let's leave scale behind for a second, but would maybe be a resource or a tool to help them develop a pros and cons view of a potential job in terms of its potential fit, its potential career path? Are we there yet, do you think? Or is the best use case on the other side of the table?
I think despite the fact that AI is not human level thinking, it can nonetheless raise some interesting observations. You could ask it to compare things. You could ask it how these things appear fairly similar. go deeper into why they're different, find me examples that relate to this. And you could provide like skill sets or industries or experience you have and ask it for what might be interesting ideas for me to explore. Again, keeping yourself as a human in the loop to parse what it's telling you and apply kind of a critical eye to it. And I think it's a great research tool. I use Perplexity Pro a lot myself when I'm researching things. And
No,
I
so
like
do
that.
I.
Yeah. I like that because in addition to being connected to models like ChatGPT or Claude, it can browse the web at high speed. So it can find things that are much more recent and bring those into its analysis. So if you're researching a company and want to find out some more about it, or kind of what its competitive landscape may be like, what its products are like, just to kind of have an informed interview, I think that's a great use case for AI. Again, validate what it's telling you, so you don't say something that's a hallucination, but nonetheless to kind of inspire you and kind of give you some threads to pull on. It's very handy.
Yeah, and I know one of the use cases that I've seen that I don't agree with is having it tailor your resume for each job application, because of hallucination, because it doesn't have an imperative necessarily to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And as humans, we're bad enough about that. There was a study a few years ago that put forward the idea or the findings that something like 82% of all LinkedIn profiles and resumes posted on the internet uh, had a material misstatement or error.
Wow.
And that's pretty big. I mean, you stop and think about it. That's pretty crazy. Um, but I'm wondering too about the applications on the other side of the table. If you are a hiring manager, and I don't know, I've talked to other people who use Perplexity and other resources in their hiring process, sometimes to detect anomalies, sometimes to find out have people with a certain background been successfully able to transition to this other field. Because one of the things I think that's coming up right now in the marketplace, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this as well. I just read, I think it's Intel is about to do another round of layoffs before the end of the year. And in tech, we've seen scads of layoffs over the past 2 or 3 years. How much of those are really driven by the advent of AI versus just they're riding an economic roller coaster and we have an evolving market in terms of the demand for their product or demand for their services and things of that nature?
Yeah, there's a lot to dig into there. Uh, Before we leave the resume topic, one more thing is the way a lot of AI systems work. They add information that would fit in statistically with what's there already, which may include adding skills you don't have just because, well, a lot of people that kind of look like they have what's on your resume have them. So that's definitely something to be aware
That's a
of.
problem.
If if the AI starts adding things that yeah probably makes sense, but it's not you anymore. Um, I mean, on the screening side, I think that's kind of a personal choice for the company on how they choose to use it and to what extent. It feels somewhat like a minefield in terms of how are you screening? What is the AI based on? The interpretability of it. Is it zoning in on some parts of the profile that would indicate bias rather than actual fit for position? So I'm not an expert in that space, but I've kind of seen enough on different applications where those are definitely questions people should be asking themselves before they do any screening and make sure they have a sufficient answer on their process and the tools they're using before they proceed further, so they don't get themselves into trouble and just don't do things that may be illegal, unethical, or somewhere on that spectrum and things that they've tried to do, maybe with good intentions, but the AI may not be following exactly what they think it's doing.
So it made me think about, the old saw is that the kid goes in and the teacher asks him, "Where's your homework?" And the dog ate my homework. Okay, well, that excuse doesn't fly. What's the new excuse now? Hey, little Johnny made a C minus. Well, little Johnny, why did you make a C minus? Well, the AI did my homework. You know, how far away are we from that? It seems like that's already happening. Um, Let me ask you this, Alec, because you've had this really cool career transition in a sense, starting the meetup group and the work you're doing uh, currently at Savas Learning Company in education, dealing with conversational AI. When you look at that, if somebody wants to get into the space, they want to be involved in AI development, AI adoption and use, and things of that nature. What's important for them to bring to the party? What's important from a skill set and mindset perspective for them to carry forward to be able to successfully step into that space?
Yeah, it's probably the best time that's ever been to be self-taught and have access to materials to learn new things, whether it's AI or other things. There's so much content. There's these AI tools that can help you learn and kind of be at least an attempt at a one-on-one conversation that will never get tired of you. You don't have to feel like, oh, I'm asking stupid questions or what will this person think? Like you can just keep asking the AI and really being able to ask critical questions and do an analysis, I think is very helpful for teaching yourself AI over other topics. And I feel like the job market is going to change and people need to adapt quickly. So really lifelong learning, being able to be nimble and the ability to be methodical and really kind of construct a method for learning new things and understanding how is this different than that was similar in the past. I think those are great skills that can help you learn AI and that can help you learn anything else. And AI can be what you learn. AI can be the tool that helps you learn things. It can be all those things. So it's actually really a great time. Like you don't have to go to a library or pay for books or expensive courses like you did in the past. Like things are at your reach and you just have to not get distracted because everything else is also in your reach in terms of things you can do online. So it's much more self-driven and finding people that have that self-drive to teach themselves, I think is an excellent sign for any type of role that I'd be looking at too.
The question that comes to my mind, if you're going to go and be an accountant, for example, you're going to want to get an accounting education, accounting degree. You might get an advanced degree. You may go get your CPA license or CMA or CIA, whatever it might be. How do you translate that or reconcile that with the fact that there are so many self-driven learning opportunities that don't necessarily come with a certification or a degree or something else that you can plop on a resume and say, I've achieved this level of expertise or mastery of a specific topic or tool. I mean, how does a person communicate that so that a vice president of software engineering, somebody who's got architecture experience and also doubles down once in a while as an investor and gets involved in stuff. How do you communicate that in a way that's not only impactful, but the hiring team reads it and goes, okay, yeah, we need to talk to this person.
I think there's sort of the bridging approach where you sort of use the new techniques to fulfill like the existing systems in place. So you can use your advanced self learning powers to rapidly teach yourself and then get that certificate or that kind of third party certification. And that can be your path in the door for certain people. Being able to show that you've had some sort of community impact, I think is very helpful. Being an organizer, being someone that is a participant in a community, it doesn't have to be a major time commitment necessarily. It doesn't have to be, I have a GitHub repo where 30,000 people have started my project. It could just be, I did a project on a weekend and I found a few things that I've learned from it, or I volunteered to make a software application, or I volunteered to help a company with their accounting. I I was familiar with a nonprofit, and I decided I'm going to give them a little bit of advice and just kind of look through. Those are all things that are fairly approachable and will distinguish you from people that don't go that next level and actually get out and make some impact in some aspect of the community.
I think that's sound advice because, at the end of the day, I think candidates in particular, companies too, are always looking for ways to distinguish themselves, their culture, how they're serving. It's when a company looks in a mirror, I don't think they can look at it and say, okay, we're profitable and that's sufficient anymore. There has to be some kind of impact and it has to be something that people can relate to. But I also think there's a lot of wilderness still in front of candidates and companies looking to hire, right? Because it hasn't been around that long in terms of developing mass, like getting a mechanical engineering degree or getting a degree in chemistry or something of that nature. There's not, unless you're in the LLMs, there's not a whole lot of hard skills at present, right? It's really about how do we use this tool and use it efficiently and effectively in a way that can distinguish ourselves from the rest of the crowd.
It's kind of the difference. Like, are you an AI researcher that's pushing the boundaries of the models, or are you an AI consumer that is become really good at applying what's there to help you in whatever you're trying to do, whether it's teach yourself something or craft some message if you're a marketer or anything you're trying to do at your job. And yeah, there is no certification. Like I'm a chat GPT level three person or anything like that. So I would go by those proxies. Like, can this person kind of structure their work, decompose it into steps, understand like what constraints they can put on it. And a lot of these have a good amount of overlap with, can this person actually lead others in terms of, like, we're going to do a software project and I'm going to ask some developer questions about what they're thinking about for their software design or how they're going to put it together. And that methodology and how I ask and what I ask is fairly relatable to how I would engage with an LLM and be methodical about what I need from it, what I need to set as guardrails so it doesn't kind of go off on and do things that are not appropriate.
Well, you say that, and the first thing that came to my mind is we're working a search assignment right now where there is a modicum, there's a level of technical background and skills the candidates need, but right alongside of it is a set of soft skills when it comes to leading and managing teams and people. Because at the end of the day, to your point earlier, if you're ordering the pizza, you're going to do that. You're not going to turn AI loose with your credit card or your bank card to do that for you without a whole lot of guardrails. I'll never eat 300 pizzas at once. Can't conceive of it. Um, and so I sit back and I think about, well, in your space, for example, the stuff that you're working with, what's how would you describe probably the most challenging use case that you've come across for the application of conversational AI?
It's something I've noticed kind of in kind of experiments and things I've been looking at as well, just kind of on the side. The AI systems are good at coming up with kind of themes, summarizing, getting like the general message, but they're not good at certain kinds of analysis of the text. And there's kind of this kind of Twitter joke now about chat GPT can't count the number of R's in the word strawberry. And like we are nowhere near any sort of AI inflection point because look how dumb that is. Like, well, it's asking a specific thing that based on like its entire architecture, it's not set up to do well because it's looking at kind of the overall patterns and kind of how it breaks words into pieces and tokens. And there's certain things that it just does not do well. And you have to consider that. How do you go from asking an LLM a question to getting a response that fits the format that you're looking? And how do you bridge that to be repeatable and make an actual application? How do you deal with the latency and the cost of it? We got used to kind of cheap and fast APIs, and the speed and cost of LLMs is always a magnitude more than something else. So you really have to plan for your software and how you merge it into like a traditional system differently than other kinds of software.
There's a lot in that, when it comes to problem solving and figuring it out. And part of what I would take away is that there are certain AI tools, LLMs and whatnot, that are better suited for certain tasks than others. Is that fair to look at it that way? And part of what we have to do is understand those differences and apply accordingly.
There's definitely, based on the type of data and how they're put together, some are suited to certain tasks than others. There's certain common architectural underpinnings to nearly all the popular LLMs, though, in terms of like how the time and cost scales with how much data you put in. So those are kind of broad based. Even the asking you to do things at a semantic level, like counting the number of letters or words, like those are still challenging for nearly all LLMs. Some have been trying to get better than others, but some things are difficult, and others that if you're looking at a particular domain and you have Google or other companies training like medical LLMs where they put in a whole lot of information, like those will be purpose suited for that. There's some that are purpose suited for math or other topics, but there are kind of underlying architecture constraints that apply even across all those different ones, at least with what's being used today.
What do you think is going to happen with it over the next 2 or 3 years? I mean, versus where we are today. I feel like we've come past couple of years. We've come a long distance. But where do you think it's going to? How are we going to look back at this, and where are we going to be in 2 or 3 years down the road?
With something moving this quickly, it's fairly challenging to know where it will go. It definitely feels it's becoming broader in terms of how it can be applied and how easily it can be applied. There's things that in the past, like I've used GPT-3 and it would barely be able to eke out an answer to certain questions that now it gets every time with the latest models. So I think the ability for it to apply some level of additional judgment, I hope they get better at just being able to align it better and have models that don't as easily get used for bad purposes. There's very intense research going on there. The open source models have been really interesting to see, and we don't know how far those will go. Like, will there be a few companies that kind of make the best models? And then if you want to do anything cutting edge, you have to use those. And if you want to do simpler things, maybe you can use kind of a smaller company, smaller model, or will the smaller models keep getting better and become powerful enough that they're useful for all sorts of things? So there's really a world of possibilities open in what can happen.
I'm curious to get, and I know we're asking these, future state questions, right? And the reason I'm asking it is because you've been in the belly of the beast, and it's the difference between looking at a car or a truck and going, "Wow, that's a really great looking vehicle," and actually looking under the hood and see what it's capable of, and seeing why it has X amount of torque or horsepower or mileage or whatever it might be. How do you think this is going to be impacting the day to day aspect of how we work?
One thing that is a hot topic now, but is not quite there yet, in my opinion, in actual consistent usefulness, is AI agents. And that's where the AI systems are able to use tools, they call them. So a tool could be like a web search, or a tool could be another API. A tool could even be the Domino's pizza order. So the agent could, in theory, today order your pizza for you if you let it. I would not let it quite yet, but maybe one day. So that brings some interesting ability for it to crowdsource across different models that are suited for different things to get up to date information, to even still bring humans into loop at opportune times. It might kind of go put together analysis through multiple different systems and pull the latest data, do a financial forecast, look at some economic metrics, and then at the end recommend like, hey, I'm recommending that we do this, hit okay, or adjust the number. I'm going to buy 30 shares of this. No, I want 20, but go ahead. So these AI agents will definitely increase how much they can self correct because it's kind of going through multiple passes on its own. You can almost imagine it having a substitute for a conversation with the person by instead having like another model that takes on the role of I'm your risk analyst or I'm your QA person or I'm your domain expert and at least making an attempt to steer it in the right direction before it gives a final answer. Right now, a lot of them don't actually converge to the final answer, and they spend a lot of time and dollars not getting to the right place. But I do think those will get further, and to some degree, I think a lot of people will start using them more heavily, and their job will be thinking up of new things and identifying problems to solve and sort of applying some of those agents to research further and kind of come up with potential ideas.
Well, and I'd imagine too, there's going to be opportunities as models become more useful. I guess you could say more refined, more defined. Um, Imagine using AI to conduct an audit, a financial statement audit, or AI to manage your supply chain subject to oversight from the human in the loop. I can definitely see the potential for that, but like you, I don't think it's there yet. I don't think there's enough,
Right.
and it kind of feels like, when you have a little baby and that baby grows and becomes a toddler and then becomes, hits pre-K and kindergarten and so on and so forth. I don't know that we necessarily recognize in our human minds how much information we're uptaking every moment and how we're dealing with that and how much the patterns we developed in those early stages control how we consume information and then turn around and lever or use that information. And I see AI and the
Yeah.
development of all these LLMs kind of along the same lines. And yeah, okay, we've got a trillion parameters or whatever it might be, and we've trained it on whatever data sources, but that's just one piece. I mean, when you compare it to the human mind and the human experience, the amount of information you've taken in over your lifetime, or I have, that in theory is been collated, stored, but I only pull out what my paradigms have showed me are useful.
One of kind of my taglines for the Bots and AI meetup was kind of exploring how AI is able to start becoming multimodal and really simulate all the human senses. And that's because there's a lot of information that is implicit. You have like sensors in your ear to tell you, are you balanced? Are you able to actually walk effectively? You have all these different um, ways to get information other than text. And right now we have models that are just emerging that are able to understand what's happening in the video to some degree. And there's models that create videos that have some sort of, they call it like a world model or like some sort of knowledge of physics that's a very high level and subject to errors, but nonetheless it's there to sort of create things that are more realistic. You're not going to drop a ball and it just kind of hangs there in the air. Like there's gravity, there's all these things happening. So I do think that will eventually keep getting into the systems, and the jury's out on how much of that will be just emergent behavior by just pumping in more data and allowing it to draw conclusions like a human brain, or is it going to be we're going to give it some very structured information on how things work and it'll blend that in. And the topic of creativity in AI I found interesting. If you look at kind of movies and plays and how much can be traced back to Shakespeare, it's kind of startling at times. So there's definitely a mix of what is truly creative, what is a riff or a remix or some sort of adjustment on what you've seen in the past, or a combination. And I am fascinated by kind of multidisciplinary understanding of things and bringing people together from different areas that maybe think a little differently, have a little different backgrounds, and come up with novel ideas. And to an extent that maybe an LLM could be a partner in that. That might be interesting as well. I can kind of be a sub for a particular type of person playing a role, and work with you to give you some interesting ideas. So yeah, lots of fun thought experiments on how all that might work.
Yeah, I mean, go back to the pizza example. Would an AI decide that pineapple does belong or does not belong on your pizza? And suppose you've never had pineapple and ham or chicken or whatever on a pizza. Some people are adamant against it. You could probably look out on the web and find lots of reviews that are against and lots of reviews that are for. Um, how does it know what you like unless you teach it that specifically?
Right.
Because it can't tell you this particular combination of fresh pineapple, peppers, and whatever on your pizza is going to be right in your alley when your favorite food is, I don't know, brisket hamburgers or whatever it might be, right? And I kind of sit back and think, well, if it takes us 25 years for the brain to completely finish growing, and the paradigms and how we interpret the world around us started at a very young age, how much longer does AI have to get to the point that it can do those things? Because to your point earlier, there's a lot of ways to intake information that aren't text based. And, we can hear, we can see, but we can also as humans interpret the movie or the video. We can overlay our own experiences on it. But even with, I don't know how much data some of these big LLMs have consumed, but even with all of that, are they moving at the pace that a 5-year-old moves? Because it's not only intaking that, it's balancing to make sure you don't go bust your chin open in the bathtub. It's also, I like a nice cool breeze in the evening. Or wow, I can look at the sun, the sky, and figure out that, well, the sun high, I probably don't want to be out there right now, but later on it'll be great. How does it interpret an ant bite? I know how I interpret it. I kill that rascal, and then I hop around for a couple of minutes, hoping the pain will go away. Um, so I think, to your point, there's a long way to go yet, and it's an exciting journey. It's a frontier of sorts. Let me ask you this on a personal note, Alec. You started the meetup, and you've given back to the community. You've given a lot to the technology space. What's next on your plate, or what do you have ongoing in that regard?
I'm actually very interested in how we're going to keep working with AI and just helping people learn and kind of adjust. So I'm working myself on always learning with these AI tools. And I don't know, at some point, maybe when I'm ready for retirement or semi-retirement or whatever that might be, doing some type of nonprofit or something related to kind of education, reskilling, helping people make sense of a new world and be adaptable. So I'm kind of thinking about things in that light as well, like how can I keep learning for myself, and what is kind of behind the ability to learn new skills and be effective at a job and the pace of technology change, like what keeps you moving along there, and how can I help people do that?
Awesome, Alec. Well, I mean, that tracks with everything you've shared, man. And I really appreciate you carving out the time today to spend it with me and our audience and talk about, I think, the practical reality of AI and its impactfulness and how we should be looking at it and use it. And I know you and I are connected on LinkedIn. If somebody wants to find you, they can find you there looking up Alec, Alec, Lazarescu. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, thank you, John. It was a pleasure.
You've been listening to Drowning in the Tech Talent Pool. This podcast is sponsored by Sabretooth. Sabretooth improves the quality of hire and speeds up the time to fill specialized machine learning, data engineering, data science, and developer roles, stretching tech recruiting budgets further by bringing the precision of retained search and the speed of contingent search to the market in one complete solution. Find out more at sbr2th.com and follow me, John Light, on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening.